Donald Trump has been, not elected, he has been voted in the 47th President of the United States. I'm joined now by Sky News host Paul Murray, awake in Washington, D.C., yet another all-nighter, Paul. Now, one of the most extraordinary things about tonight that so many people are furious over, and I tell you what, I bet you Democrats will be ropeable about this, Kamala Harris didn't bother to appear, not gracious enough to stand up and say to Democrats and to her supporters who'd been waiting there for hours, thank you for your support. You know, if she thinks the results were unclear, she could have said that. But she didn't. She went home. She was a no-show. What do you think of this, Paul?
It's a disgrace, and it's an insight into her true personality. You know, the truth is now, look, I can sort of loosen it up a bit now because we're sort of out of the news time and we're now into the opinion time, and obviously in about half an hour I'm really going to let loose. But the truth is that when you lose an election, you can often see the true test of somebody. We saw that Stephen Miles failed that in Queensland, and we saw that Kamala Harris failed it here. If this election was travelling the way that it was, but in the opposite direction, like at 10 o'clock here, which was about 2 o'clock Sydney time, it was so clear, it was obvious that he was winning, that he had won at that point in time. So I think the networks would have started to rush towards the doors to say that Trump had been defeated and she's on her way and we'll let the numbers trickle in. But the fact that she didn't look the people in her eye who believed in her so much that they were willing to door knock and to debate and to call and to fight with their families and to stand in what can be cold at times in Washington was just, it was low. I can't come up with a more creative word that doesn't start to move into the ones that I get in trouble for saying sometimes on TV.
Mm-hmm. And, I was flicking all day between Fox News and CNN, and the CNN reporters at first said, the Kamala Harris team has gone silent. We haven't heard from them. Then they said, we've got a memo from her campaign manager, and they're still holding out hope for the blue wave for Wisconsin, Michigan and Pennsylvania. And before long, that was clearly heading in Trump's direction. He decisively won Pennsylvania, but the fact that they were still briefing this out, I mean, they accused Trump of not accepting results, but this is where they were heading quite late at night. Paul Murray, I want to ask you what you made of Donald Trump's speech. Do you think he said enough to unify what is a divided nation?
Look, for those, I mean, let's be honest, the people that sort of can be won over, or at least after an election when they let the air out and say, look, all I want is the best for the joint. It's not going to be everyone who didn't vote for him. There's obviously going to be, let's say, half, 3/4 of people who understandably are going to be hurt or rageful, all the rest of it. Look, he can always do a better job at this stuff. He can always do a better job at sophistry. He can always do a better job at a tighter message. But, I mean, think about what this bloke was playing with during this entire campaign. And they talk about the stakes and the future of democracy. This bloke had two options. He was going to become president, or he was going to go to jail for the rest of his life. At no point did he look like a man who was playing with that level of stakes. So I think that what people eventually saw in Trump when at some point in the past year or so they started to make the decision about, are we going to go back to this bloke? They saw a guy whose reaction to being shot was to say, fight, 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 whose reaction to being charged with things that, let's be honest, at the very best in some scenarios, they were a bounce of the ball that always sort of went the other way, was not to cave, was not to crumble. When the media was going wild because there was a joke at a rally, he found a way just to keep pushing on. And if he's willing to do that for himself, I think the most important thing that he said in his speech tonight was that every breath that I have, I will fight for you. And we know how hard he can fight for himself, and if he's promising to do that for the entire country, look, the word unity mightn't be there, but the message was pretty clear, which is, I'm taking care of you now.
Yeah, and he did have that line about he wants to heal the nation now as well. Paul, I think another very big outcome of this election is that really pretty much since Barack Obama, and it's reflected in Australia as well, we've seen this progressive wave of identity politics, really going very woke. the Democratic Party used to be more mainstream. Do you think this result, maybe this is being too hopeful, will kill off some of those more radical ends of the woke agenda that the Democrats were pushing on America?
Well, see, don't forget, unlike Australia, where we've got, say, the Greens or One Nation or Palmer or Victorian Socialists or whatever it happens to be, there's lots of different places that you can put your vote depending on where you are on the spectrum. When essentially this is Team Red, Team Blue, it means that the entire team is at times defined by the furthest parts of their coalitions. Now, if they want to win again, you've got to come back to some form of the centre, or at least come back from the perception about how hard left you're going to go. But that said, and again, let's not talk about the next grand final while this one is still echoing through the streets. But there are policies the Democrats have that are wildly popular, like Medicare for all. There are policies that are wildly needed in the country, like mental health care, like dental care. Now, these things, because of the size of spending, will be referred to as lefty. But the stuff that normal people reject is when we have to go through sort of the performance that much of the modern left is involved with. So I think whoever the next most successful senior Democrat is going to be somebody who doesn't just pretend to be a little more normal, they're going to actually have to be a little bit more normal. And I think that economic populism, which is being championed by Trump, I think it'll be echoed by the Democrats into the future. But if they want to keep banging on about, pronouns and pretending that, Columbus Day isn't a public holiday, all of this stuff, well then, good luck. You'll get the same thing again in 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was even more extreme than that. The ads that the Republicans were running, which were just Kamala Harris in her own words, were talking about taxpayer-funded gender transitioning for prison inmates. I mean, it's just bizarre stuff. All right, Paul Murray, we'll see you back here at 9 o'clock for more. And Paul will certainly fire up, stick with us on this extraordinary night.